welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. The emergency klaxon screamed through the communications center at 0347 hours, jolting me from my third cup of coffee in as many hours. I'd been monitoring routine overnight transmissions when the cascade of red alerts began flooding my screens. Priority 1. Global emergency. Nuclear command authentication required. My fingers flew across the encrypted terminal as fragments of desperate transmissions crackled through the static. President's convoy has vanished. Prime Minister's security detail found unconscious. Chancellor's residence empty. No signs of struggle. I am Staff Sergeant Ronan Hayes, Nuclear Communications Specialist for the Global Defense Initiative. For 8 years, I've maintained the secure channels that keep world leaders connected to their nuclear arsenals. Tonight, those channels were screaming with panic as the unthinkable was happening in real time. Ronan! Aloan's voice cut through the chaos as she burst through the reinforced doors, her intelligence analyst badge still swinging from her neck. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, and her usually immaculate uniform was wrinkled. Tell me you're seeing this too. I gestured at the wall of monitors displaying a nightmare scenario. 17 world leaders gone, all within the last 4 hours. No demands, no claims of responsibility, no bodies. My throat felt dry despite the coffee. The automated systems are already requesting secondary authorization protocols. She leaned over my shoulder, her breath warm against my ear as she studied the data streams. It's not random, Ronan. Look at the pattern. Her finger traced across the screen. Nuclear powers first, then their closest allies. Someone knew exactly who to target. The secure line buzzed with an incoming transmission from the Pentagon. Colonel Morrison's face appeared on the monitor, his usual composure cracked. Behind him, I could see other officers moving frantically between stations. Hayes, I need you to verify something. Check the authentication logs for the past 24 hours. Look for any unusual access patterns. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled up the classified logs. What I found made my blood run cold. Sir, there were multiple attempts to access the global strike authorization codes. All failed authentication, but I paused, cross-referencing the timestamps. They stopped trying exactly 6 hours before the first disappearance. Morrison's face went pale. Negative on that timeline, Hayes. Cross-reference with the Greenwich Mean Time logs. He paused, checking something off-screen. I'm implementing Protocol 7. You and your team are to report to Bunker Complex Delta immediately. Do not stop for personal belongings. Do not contact family. Do not discuss this with anyone outside your clearance level. The transmission cut to static before I could respond. Protocol 7. I'd studied it in training but never imagined it would be implemented. Complete isolation of nuclear command personnel in the event of a decapitation strike against leadership. Ronan, we need to move. Aloan's voice was steady, but I could see the fear in her eyes. If someone's targeting the command structure, we might be next. I began the emergency shutdown sequence for my station when a new alert chimed. Personal message, Priority Alpha. My stomach clenched as I recognized General Harrison's encryption signature. He'd been my mentor, the man who'd recruited me into nuclear communications. According to the intelligence briefings, he was supposed to be in the secure compound with the other missing leaders. The message was audio only, crackling with interference. Ronan, if you're receiving this, then the worst has happened. I recorded this as a contingency before tonight's emergency session. The summit wasn't about trade agreements. We discovered something, a coordinated infiltration of our security apparatus. I fear we walked into a trap. The override codes for the automated systems, they're not where we left them. Someone's been planning this for months. Trust no one above your clearance level. The bunker protocols may be compromised. If civilization is to survive, it's up to people like you now. Remember what I taught you about the fail-safe procedures. The real ones, not what's in the manual. And Ronan, tell my daughter I'm sorry I couldn't keep my promise about dinner next week. The message ended with a burst of static that made my equipment spark. Eloan grabbed my arm. What did he say? I stared at the screen, the implications hitting me like a physical blow. He said the summit was a trap. The override codes are missing. I turned to meet her eyes. And the automated systems are designed to launch if they can't reach authorized personnel within 72 hours. The lights flickered, and emergency power kicked in with a low hum. Through the reinforced windows, I could see other personnel running toward the bunker complexes. In the distance, the automated defense systems were coming online, their searchlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. How long do we have? Eloan asked, already knowing the answer would be terrible. I checked my watch and calculated backwards from the timestamp of the first confirmed disappearance. 64 hours, 37 minutes. The metallic taste of fear filled my mouth. If we can't restore the command structure or input the override codes, every nuclear power on Earth will interpret the silence as a first strike. The automated retaliation systems will launch everything. A new transmission crackled through the emergency channel. All nuclear communications personnel report to designated bunker facilities immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The Continental Defense Council has been activated under emergency protocols. Eloan pulled up her tablet, displaying global communications traffic. Look at this. It's not just our leaders. Russia, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, their nuclear command structures are all showing the same pattern. Someone didn't just target one nation. They targeted the entire global nuclear hierarchy. I grabbed my emergency kit and the portable communication array. We need to get to the bunker now. If General Harrison was right about the infiltration, we might be the only ones who can prevent global annihilation. As we ran through the corridors toward the bunker complex, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were already too late. The emergency lights cast long shadows that seemed to reach for us, and every corner could hide someone waiting to complete whatever mission had already claimed the world's leaders. The heavy blast doors of Bunker Complex Delta loomed ahead, their steel surfaces gleaming under the emergency lighting. Security personnel in full combat gear waved us through the checkpoint after scanning our biometric data. As we approached the entrance, I realized that crossing that threshold would change everything. Whatever happened next, the world I'd known for 26 years was gone forever. But I had a duty to fulfill and maybe, just maybe, a chance to prevent the end of civilization itself. The blast doors began to close behind us with a sound like thunder, sealing us into the reinforced complex where humanity's nuclear future would be decided. In my pocket, General Harrison's final message burned like a brand, carrying the weight of everything he tried to teach me about the systems that could either save or destroy us all. The countdown had begun, and I was running out of time to save the world. I watched the tactical display flicker as another red dot appeared over the Pacific. for hours since Commander Torres's final transmission, and the situation had degraded from crisis to potential apocalypse. The emergency bunker's ventilation system hummed with increasing strain, recycling the same stale air that tasted increasingly metallic, a sign the external air filtration had switched to contamination protocols. "Confirm that reading," I ordered, my voice cutting through the sterile atmosphere of Command Level 7. The bunker stretched deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, designed to survive direct nuclear strikes, but I wondered if it could survive the collapse of civilization itself. Eloan's fingers danced across her console, her usual calm demeanor cracking. "It's confirmed, Ronin. Chinese nuclear submarine Changqing 18 has gone dark after transmitting an authentication code that doesn't match any in our database. That's the fourth vessel in the last 2 hours to use unrecognized authorization." I felt my stomach drop. Authentication codes were the backbone of nuclear command structure. They verified legitimate authority for weapons deployment. If submarines were using unknown codes, someone had either compromised the global authentication system or was operating under authority that had been completely restructured without our knowledge. "Sir," Cale's voice carried from the security station, his technical expertise focused on the wall of monitors displaying global nuclear assets. "I'm reading anomalous activity at 3 ICBM silos in Montana. Automated systems are running diagnostics they shouldn't be running without direct authorization." The weight of command pressed down on me. Commander Torres had been clear in his final encrypted burst transmission. Maintain communications, assess threats, prevent unauthorized launches at all costs. But how could I prevent launches when the people authorized to stop them had vanished, and unknown entities were issuing valid authentication codes? "Bring up the timeline," I said, moving to the central display. "Show me exactly when each leader went missing." The holographic projection materialized, showing a three-dimensional map of the world with timestamps. President Chun of China disappeared at 14:32 Greenwich Mean Time during a closed-door session. Prime Minister Singh of India, last seen at 14:45 Greenwich Mean Time entering a secure conference room. Russian President Volkov. Security footage ended abruptly at 14:38 Greenwich Mean Time. Secretary of Defense Harrison. Vanished at 14:41 Greenwich Mean Time from a Pentagon briefing room. "They're all within a 13-minute window," Eloan observed, her analyst training kicking in. "And look at this, each disappearance coincides with a simultaneous communication blackout in their respective command centers. Someone had real-time intelligence on all their locations." I studied the pattern, my mind racing. "That's not random. Someone coordinated this. Or something," Cale muttered, then caught himself. "Sorry, sir. Just..." The precision of it is unsettling. The main communication array crackled to life. "Cheyenne Mountain Command, this is RAF Filingdales. We have multiple contacts launching from undetermined positions. Request immediate threat assessment and rules of engagement." I grabbed the microphone. "Filingdales, this is Mountain Command. Specify contacts and trajectory." "Sir, we're reading 8 confirmed ballistic trajectories. Launch points appear to be mobile platforms, possibly submarine-based. Estimated time to impact various metropolitan targets. 43 minutes and counting." The blood drained from my face. Mobile launches were the nightmare scenario. Impossible to track back to their origin. Designed for maximum confusion and retaliation. If multiple nations detected incoming missiles without knowing their source, they would launch everything they had. "Eloan, I need threat assessment now," I barked, my training taking over. "Cross-reference those trajectories with known submarine positions and payload capabilities." "Working on it," she replied, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards. But Ronan, there's something else. I'm detecting communication attempts from inside the Pentagon's classified networks. Someone's trying to establish contact using emergency protocols. Hope flickered in my chest. Patch it through. The speakers filled with static, then a voice I didn't recognize. This is Deputy Secretary Morrison, Pentagon Emergency Operations. Cheyenne Mountain. Respond immediately. I hesitated. Morrison wasn't in the direct chain of command I knew, but during a crisis of this magnitude, succession protocols could elevate unexpected individuals to critical authority. The question was whether this was legitimate succession or someone exploiting the chaos. This is Mountain Command, I responded carefully. Request authentication code and authorization for emergency command assumption. Authentication Charlie 77 Delta Tango 9. I'm assuming emergency command authority under Presidential Succession Directive 51. We have intelligence suggesting the missing leaders discovered evidence of a coordinated effort to trigger global nuclear exchange. That's why they were eliminated. Do not authorize any retaliatory strikes without explicit confirmation from this command. I exchanged glances with Eloan. Charlie 77 Delta Tango 9 was a valid emergency succession code, but it was also one that could be obtained by someone with access to classified succession protocols. The extended sequence suggested either legitimate deep emergency authority or a very sophisticated impersonation. Sir, Kale interrupted. I'm showing automated sequences initiating at Strategic Command Headquarters. Someone's accessed the war room computers and input preliminary launch authorizations using what appears to be valid command codes. That's impossible, I said. Those systems require dual-key authorization from confirmed leadership plus biometric verification. Unless someone has both override codes and biometric spoofing capability, Eloan said quietly, or unless the systems themselves have been compromised at the hardware level. The tactical display updated with new information. The mysterious launches were now tracked to impact major population centers: London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Tel Aviv, and Los Angeles. Each strike would kill millions and trigger massive retaliation from the targeted nations, creating a cascade of nuclear exchanges that would devastate the globe. Morrison, I called into the microphone. We need immediate clarification on rules of engagement and succession verification. Are you ordering a complete stand-down or preparation for defensive response? Silence stretched for long seconds. When Morrison's voice returned, it carried an edge of desperation. Mountain Command, we have reason to believe the launches are false flag operations designed to trigger automatic retaliation protocols. The missing leaders discovered evidence of a coordinated effort to initiate global nuclear exchange. That's why they were eliminated. Eliminated. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Assassinated, captured, or neutralized, Morrison continued. We're not certain of the method, but we know the purpose. Someone wants nuclear war to begin, and they're counting on standard military response protocols to provide it. Every retaliatory action we take could be exactly what they're waiting for. I felt the weight of decision crushing down on me. If Morrison was legitimate and correct, any retaliation would start the very war we were trying to prevent. But if he was compromised, or if he was part of the conspiracy himself, standing down would leave entire nations defenseless against incoming strikes. Eloan, I said quietly, can you verify Morrison's credentials independently using the backup authentication networks? I'm trying, but most verification networks are down or showing conflicting information. It's like someone systematically eliminated our ability to confirm legitimate authority while simultaneously creating false legitimacy. The bunker's emergency lighting flickered, casting eerie shadows across the command center. Through the reinforced windows, I could see the mountain's internal emergency systems activating. Red lights strobed in corridors designed to house the survivors of nuclear war, while automated systems began sealing blast doors deeper in the complex. 34 minutes to impact, Kale announced, his voice steady despite the circumstances. I'm also detecting increased seismic activity from the direction of Colorado Springs. Could be related to the NORAD facility implementing lockdown protocols. I stared at the tactical display, watching the red dots of incoming missiles arc across the globe toward unsuspecting cities. Millions of lives hung in the balance, and I had to choose between trusting an unverified voice or taking action that could doom the world. Morrison, I said into the microphone, my decision crystallizing. I'm implementing Protocol 7 under emergency authority. We're going to attempt independent verification of your credentials while establishing contact with any remaining Allied command structures. If you're legitimate authority, you'll understand the necessity of verification. If you're not, you're making a critical mistake. Morrison's voice crackled through increasing static. Any response will trigger automatic escalation algorithms built into the global nuclear response network. The people behind this are counting on exactly this kind of traditional military response. Then we'll have to be smarter than traditional, I replied, cutting the connection and immediately ordering Kale to trace the transmission's origin. I turned to my team. Iloan, I need you to establish secure communication with any remaining command authority you can verify through multiple independent channels. Kale, prepare defensive countermeasures and trace that transmission. If those missiles are real, we need to protect our assets. If they're fake, we need to expose the deception before other nations retaliate. And if they're real but we can't stop them? Iloan asked, her hands already moving across her console. I looked at the countdown timer, 32 minutes and falling. Then we make sure whoever's responsible doesn't get the global war they're trying to start. As my team dispersed to their stations, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being manipulated by forces far beyond our understanding. The disappearance of global leaders, the coordinated attacks on command structures, the perfectly timed launches using valid but unverifiable authentication codes. It all pointed to a conspiracy so vast and sophisticated it seemed impossible. But impossible or not, it was happening. And somewhere in the depths of Cheyenne Mountain, surrounded by the machinery of nuclear war, I had to find a way to prevent the end of the world while never being certain who I could trust. The metallic taste in the air grew stronger, and I realized it wasn't just from the recycled oxygen. The bunker's radiation detectors were picking up trace amounts of fallout from somewhere, either from the facilities being targeted or from something much closer. We were no longer just monitoring a crisis. We were trapped inside it, and the walls of reality itself were closing in. The emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as I hunched over the communication console, my fingers cramping from 14 hours of trying to establish contact with anyone in the chain of command. The bunker's recycled air tasted increasingly metallic, and the static electricity had grown so intense that every metal surface gave me shocks strong enough to make my muscles spasm. Ronan, you need to see this. Iloan's voice carried a tremor I'd never heard before. She stood at the intelligence terminal, her face pale in the monitor's glow. Dark circles under her eyes showed she'd been working as obsessively as I had. I've been analyzing the timeline of the disappearances, cross-referencing with communication logs from the past 18 hours. I abandoned the useless radio and moved to her station, my legs stiff from sitting too long. The screen showed a complex web of data points, but even I could see the pattern. They're too precise, I muttered, studying the synchronized timing. No way this was random. Exactly. 27 world leaders across 6 continents, all vanishing within a 4-hour window. But look at this. She highlighted specific timestamps. The disappearances followed the international date line, east to west, perfectly timed to avoid overlapping emergency responses. Someone planned this down to the minute. Cale looked up from the nuclear console where he'd been frantically trying to override the automated sequences, his uniform soaked with sweat. You're saying this wasn't random? I'm saying this was orchestrated with military precision. Aloan's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up classified files that required her intelligence clearance. Someone had access to every leader's schedule, security protocols, and emergency procedures. This level of coordination requires inside help from multiple governments. I finished, the words leaving a bitter taste. My mind raced through the implications. How many people have that kind of global access? Fewer than 50 worldwide. But Ronan, there's more. She pulled up another screen, this one showing financial transactions. In the past 6 months, there's been massive movement of assets through shell companies, all traced back to a single source through the Cayman Islands. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the bunker plunged into darkness. Emergency power kicked in, but the systems were clearly struggling. I felt that familiar tingle of electricity building in the air, the same sensation I'd felt before every major equipment failure today. The power grid's failing faster than projected, Cale announced, his voice tight with controlled panic. We've got maybe 4 hours before the backup generators give out completely. After that, we lose all control systems. Then we need to move fast. I turned back to Aloan. What did you find? She hesitated, glancing toward the bunker's sealed entrance. The financial trail leads to the Prometheus Group. They've been buying up defense contractors, communication networks, even pieces of the nuclear infrastructure itself. The acquisitions accelerated dramatically after the Tehran crisis last year. I knew that name. Every intelligence officer did. The think tank? They've been pushing for streamlined global governance for years. Published white papers about it. Not just pushing, Ronan. Planning. Soraya's voice came from behind us, and I spun around to see her emerging from the shadows near the storage area. She moved differently now, less cautious, more determined. Her government-issued sidearm was still holstered, but her posture screamed military training. I've been waiting for the right moment to tell you. Tell us what? I kept my hand near my sidearm, though I wasn't sure why. Something in her posture had changed completely from the nervous insider I'd known for the past day. I work for them, or rather, I worked for them until I realized what they were actually planning. She held up her hands, showing she was unarmed. I was part of the advanced intelligence team, gathering data on global command structures. I thought we were trying to prevent nuclear war, not engineer one. The bunker fell silent except for the hum of failing equipment and the distant sound of cooling systems struggling to maintain temperature. Aloan's fingers had stopped moving across the keyboard. Cale stood frozen at his console, his face reflecting the horror I felt. You helped them disappear the leaders, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You had access to their schedules, their security protocols. I provided the intelligence. I didn't know. Soraya's voice cracked. They told us it was a temporary measure, a way to force a new international framework to prevent nuclear accidents. But I've been monitoring their communications through secure channels, and they're not planning to release anyone. Ever. Why should we trust you? Cale's hand moved to his weapon, his nuclear security training kicking in. You just admitted to treason because I'm the only one who knows where they're being held. Soraya pulled out a small device, a secure communicator with encryption I'd never seen before. And because I'm the only one who can access the real override codes, the implications hit me like a physical blow. The codes we've been trying to use are fake, sophisticated decoys that look real but won't actually prevent launches. Soraya's voice was steady now, professional. The real ones are biometrically locked to the missing leaders, but there's a backup protocol. One that requires someone with Prometheus clearance to activate. Another power surge flickered through the bunker, and somewhere in the distance, I heard the ominous sound of metal grinding against metal. The automated systems were accelerating their countdown. How long do we have? I asked. The Asian markets open in 3 hours. If the global economy collapses completely, they'll have achieved their goal without firing a single missile. Soraya's face was grim. But if any nation launches first, they'll use it as justification for their new world order. Either way, they win. So we stop them, Eloan said, her analyst's mind already working through the problem. We expose the conspiracy, restore the real command structure. It's not that simple. Soraya activated her communicator, showing us a live feed from what looked like a secure facility. The leaders are being held in a black site facility in the Colorado mountains. Even if we could get there, the place is designed to withstand direct nuclear attack. I studied the feed, noting the familiar faces of world leaders I'd seen in briefings. They were alive but clearly imprisoned, some showing signs of interrogation. There has to be another way to get those codes. There is, Soraya said quietly, but it requires trust. And it requires all of us to leave the bunker. The lights went out again, staying dark for almost 30 seconds this time. When they flickered back on, I could see the strain in everyone's faces. The air recycling system was making grinding noises now. The choice is this, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. We can stay here and try to prevent individual launches as they happen, probably failing when the power dies. Or we can trust Soraya and try to restore the actual command structure. What are you not telling us? Eloan asked, her analyst instincts sharp even under pressure. There's something else. Soraya met my eyes. Getting to the facility means leaving the bunker's protection. And once we're outside, we'll be exposed to whatever's happening on the surface. The communications blackout means we don't know if any weapons have already been used. The radiation could be lethal. The metallic taste in my mouth grew stronger, and I realized it wasn't just from the recycled air. Fear had its own flavor, sharp and bitter. How do we know this isn't another trap? You don't, Soraya admitted. But consider this, if I wanted to sabotage you, I could have done it any time in the past day. Instead, I've been trying to keep us alive while figuring out how to fix this. I looked at Kale, who was studying his console with growing alarm. The automated sequences just accelerated again. We're down to 2 hours before the first systems reach critical decision points. After that, individual missile sites start making their own launch decisions. Make the call, Ronan, Eloan said. You're the ranking officer here. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of potentially billions of lives in my hands. The bunker's failing power systems hummed around us, a constant reminder that doing nothing was also a choice. When I opened my eyes, I saw 3 faces looking at me with desperate hope. We go, I decided. But Soraya, if you're lying, if this is some elaborate setup, then we're all dead anyway, she finished. But I'm telling you the truth. The question is, are you ready to risk everything on that? The bunker's main lights went out completely, leaving us in the dim glow of emergency battery power. In the distance, I could hear the automated systems beginning their final countdown sequences. The air recycling system gave a final grinding sound and stopped. "Get your gear," I ordered. "We're going to save some leaders and stop a war." As we gathered our equipment, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. But staying put meant watching helplessly as the world burned around us. Sometimes the only choice was between bad and worse. The bunker's exit seal began to cycle open, and for the first time in hours, I felt something other than despair. It might have been hope, or it might have been the electricity in the air building toward something explosive. Either way, we were committed now. The real test of Soraya's story would come when we reached the surface and discovered what was left of the world above. The klaxons shrieked through the bunker's reinforced corridors as I sprinted toward the command center, my boots echoing against concrete walls that seemed to pulse with each alarm cycle. 22 hours had passed since we'd discovered Soraya's intelligence about the coordinated leadership purge, and now every nightmare scenario was cascading into reality. "Ronan, get in here now." Kale's voice crackled through my comm unit, barely audible over the chaos erupting from the central command room. I burst through the blast doors to find him hunched over a console, his face illuminated by the angry red glow of multiple warning displays. "What's the situation?" I demanded, though the screens already told most of the story. Nuclear facilities across 3 continents were showing active launch preparations, their automated systems responding to protocols that should have required human authorization. "The fail-safes are gone," Kale said, his voice hollow. "Not just disabled, completely purged from the systems. Someone with root access systematically removed every safety protocol over the past 6 months." His fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up cascading error messages. "The automated sequences are treating this as a legitimate command structure breakdown. Without the missing authorization codes, the systems are defaulting to predetermined retaliation scenarios." I felt the blood drain from my face. "How long until first launch?" 37 minutes for the European grid. The Pacific installations are already in final countdown, 8 minutes. Aloan's voice cut through from her station across the room. "I'm tracking multiple missile defense systems going offline. This isn't random. Someone's creating gaps in our early warning network." She spun her chair around, her usually calm demeanor cracking. "Ronan, they're not just planning to launch our weapons. They're ensuring we can't defend against incoming strikes." The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about removing global leaders. It was about ensuring mutual destruction. Someone wanted the existing world order completely annihilated. "Can we restore the failsafes?" I asked, moving to Kale's console. "I've been trying for the past hour." His hands trembled as he pulled up system diagnostics. The deletion protocols were elegant. They didn't just remove the safety codes, they corrupted the underlying architecture. Even if we had the original authorization sequences, there's nothing left to authorize. A new alarm joined the cacophony, this one deeper and more ominous. The main display flickered, then resolved into a global map dotted with pulsing red indicators. My stomach dropped as I recognized the pattern. Active nuclear installations, their status changing from yellow to red as automated systems engaged. "First detonation confirmed," Aloan reported, her voice barely steady. "Small yield, approximately 2 kilotons. Moscow secondary facility. Radiation signature consistent with reactor breach, not warhead detonation." The distinction was crucial but provided little comfort. Whether intentional or accidental, nuclear material had just been released into the atmosphere. "We need to make a choice," I said, the words feeling like lead in my mouth. "We can try to reach the remaining command authorities, or we can attempt to override the systems ourselves." Kale looked up from his console, his face gaunt. "There are no remaining command authorities, Ronan. The automated systems have been trying to establish contact for 18 hours. The backup command structures, the emergency protocols, the continuity of government procedures, they're all compromised or destroyed. Then we override," I decided. "We have partial access to the Pacific grid systems. If we can demonstrate that we're acting under legitimate authority." "With what authority?" Soraya's voice cut through from the corridor entrance. She stood in the doorway, her security badge still hanging from her jacket, but something in her posture had changed. The intelligence I provided was accurate, but incomplete. I turned to face her, my hand instinctively moving toward my sidearm. "What do you mean, incomplete?" "The leadership purge wasn't conducted by a shadow organization," she said, stepping into the room with deliberate calm. "It was conducted by the legitimate intelligence apparatus of 7 major powers. A coordinated effort to prevent global nuclear war by removing the human element from nuclear command structures." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "You're saying the governments did this to themselves?" "I'm saying that 4 weeks ago, intelligence agencies across the world independently reached the same conclusion, that human leadership had become too unstable to maintain nuclear deterrence. The missing leaders weren't kidnapped. They were removed and placed in secure facilities until the automated systems could be properly calibrated." Kale's console chimed with another warning. "For minutes until Pacific grid launch. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." I stared at Soraya, trying to process the implications. If this was planned, then there must be a way to stop it. The intelligence agencies wouldn't have implemented a system without safeguards. "There were safeguards," she admitted, "but they required the cooperation of all 7 participating nations. The Moscow incident wasn't an accident. It was Russia attempting to break the protocol unilaterally. Their reactor breach was a deliberate signal to abort the automated sequence. And the other nations ignored the signal. The automated systems interpreted it as hostile action and accelerated their own timelines." The room's emergency lighting flickered, casting shifting shadows across the walls. I could feel the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders, millions of lives hanging in the balance, and the traditional command structure that should have been making these decisions was gone. "Show me the override protocols," I commanded. Soraya hesitated. "The protocols require authentication from 3 participating agencies. I only have credentials for 2. "Then we improvise," I said, moving to the primary command console. "Kale, what's the minimum input required to delay the launch sequence?" "A recognized authorization code and biometric confirmation from a flag officer or equivalent," he replied. "But the biometric scanners are programmed to reject anyone not on the approved list." I pulled out my military ID, the one that had gotten us into this bunker in the first place. "What about emergency protocols?" "Military units are trained to act independently when communication with higher command is lost." Eloan looked up from her station. "There's a provision in the nuclear command protocols for autonomous unit action during communication breakdown, but it requires evidence of imminent threat to national security and confirmation that standard command structure is inoperative." "I'd say a global nuclear exchange qualifies," I said grimly. "And we have documented proof that standard command structure is compromised." "Kale, can you access the emergency authorization system?" His fingers flew across the keyboard. "It's still active, but it requires 2-factor authentication." We need both a command authorization and intelligence verification. I looked at Soraya. Your intelligence. I'm command. Can we make this work? She nodded slowly. The system might accept our credentials as emergency authorization, but there's a problem. The emergency protocols are designed to authorize defensive measures. Using them to prevent launches could be interpreted as exceeding our authority. 1 minute to Pacific launch, Kale announced. The weight of the decision crushed down on me. Use our credentials to stop the launches and potentially face charges of exceeding authority, or allow the automated systems to proceed with what might be a coordinated plan to prevent global war. Except that plan was already failing catastrophically. Do it, I decided. Both of us, simultaneous authentication. Soraya moved to the adjacent console. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. We pressed our hands to the biometric scanners simultaneously. The system hummed for several long seconds, then chimed with acceptance. Emergency authorization accepted. The computer announced in its maddeningly calm voice. Autonomous Unit Command Protocols activated. Please specify defensive measures. Delay Pacific Grid Launch Sequence, I commanded. Authorization code Tango 77 Alpha. Pacific Grid Launch Sequence delayed. New launch time, 31 minutes from mark. I felt a moment of relief, then realized we'd only bought ourselves time. Kale, what do we need to permanently abort the launch? Override codes from the original command structure or direct physical intervention at the launch facilities, he replied. The delayed sequence will execute automatically unless we can provide proper authorization. Alohan Station erupted in new alarms. I'm detecting multiple aircraft approaching our position. Military signatures, but not broadcasting standard identification codes. Through the bunker's reinforced walls, I could hear the distant sound of helicopters approaching. The conspiracy, whether government-sanctioned or not, had finally tracked us down. They're coming for us, I said, checking my weapon. How long do we have? Based on approach speed, maybe 8 minutes before they reach the main entrance, Alohan reported. I looked around the room at my team, at Kale hunched over his console, still trying to find a way to permanently stop the launches, at Alohan monitoring the approaching aircraft, at Soraya, whose revelations had changed everything but solved nothing. We need to make a choice, I said. We can try to hold this position and continue working on the abort codes, or we can attempt to reach one of the launch facilities directly. The nearest Pacific facility is 53 miles away, Kale said. Even if we could get there, it's heavily fortified. We'd need military support, which we don't have, I replied, because the people who should be providing that support are either missing or part of the conspiracy. The sound of helicopters grew louder, joined now by the rumble of ground vehicles. Through the bunker's security cameras, I could see armed figures in unmarked tactical gear taking positions around the facility. They're not here to arrest us, Soraya said quietly. They're here to ensure the plan proceeds as intended. I felt the crushing weight of inevitability settling over us. The automated systems would launch in 47 minutes unless we could provide authorization codes we didn't have. The people approaching our position were here to prevent us from interfering further. And somewhere in the world, nuclear weapons were already beginning to detonate. Alohan, is there any way to broadcast our situation to the public? I asked. She shook her head. All civilian communication networks are down. We're completely cut off. The bunker's main entrance alarm began blaring, indicating someone was attempting to breach the blast doors. I estimated we had maybe 3 minutes before they reached the command center. Kale, I said, forget the abort codes. Is there any way to redirect the launches? Change the targets? Maybe, he said, his voice strained. The targeting systems are separate from the authorization protocols. If I can access the guidance computers, do it, I ordered. Aloan, help him. Soraya, you're with me. We're going to buy them as much time as we can. As I moved toward the command center's defensive positions, I realized we were no longer trying to prevent a nuclear war. We were trying to ensure that when it happened, it would be on our terms rather than theirs. The sound of cutting tools began echoing through the bunker's corridors. Our time was running out and the world was about to burn. The bunker shuddered as another distant detonation registered on our seismic monitors. I watched the countdown displays with growing desperation. 17 minutes until the final automated launch sequence initiated across 3 continents. The emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as our backup power systems struggled under the increasing load of damaged electronics. Ronan, I've got it. Aloan's voice crackled through the comm from section C7, barely audible over the sound of grinding metal and cascading concrete. The master override codes. They're in the quantum vault, but the access tunnel is collapsing. I stared at the structural integrity display showing section C7. The entire corridor was compromised, support beams buckling under the weight of 3 floors of reinforced concrete above. The seismic activity from the strike on Denver had triggered a cascade failure in the bunker's eastern wing. Going in there was suicide. Aloan, negative. Fall back to the main corridor. I barked into the radio, but static answered me. The interference was getting worse as more electronics failed throughout the facility. Kale looked up from the launch control terminal, his face pale in the crimson light. Ronan, without those codes, we can't override the Beijing grid. That's 200 warheads that will launch in 16 minutes. His fingers flew over the keyboard, but I could see the futility in his movements. The shadow protocols they installed, they're locked behind quantum encryption. We need that vault. Soraya emerged from the intelligence station, a printout clutched in her trembling hands. It's worse than we thought. The conspiracy runs deeper than just the missing leaders. They've been planning this for 18 months, systematically compromising every nuclear command authority worldwide. The disappearances were just the final step. She handed me the document, her eyes haunted. They call themselves the Reset Council. Former military officers, intelligence operatives, defense contractors. They believe nuclear war is inevitable, so they're orchestrating it on their terms. Create a controlled global catastrophe, then emerge as the new world order from their prepared sanctuaries. The radio crackled with Aloan's voice again, weaker now. I'm at the vault entrance. The tunnel's completely blocked behind me. There's no way back. But I can reach the quantum core. Just talk me through the extraction process. My blood ran cold. If she was trapped in there, the collapsing structure would crush her within minutes. But without those codes, hundreds of millions would die in the nuclear exchange. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Aloan, listen to me, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. You need to get out of there. We'll find another way. There is no other way, she shouted back, and I could hear the desperation breaking through her usual calm. The vault is the only place they couldn't compromise. It's quantum isolated, hardened against their infiltration. This is our only shot. Kale grabbed my shoulder. Ronan, she's right. The Reset Council has had years to prepare. Every other system, every other failsafe, they found a way around. But the quantum vault was designed to be accessed only in person, with biometric confirmation. They couldn't hack it remotely. Another tremor shook the bunker. On the monitors, I watched ceiling panels crash down in section C7. The structural integrity display showed critical failure spreading through the support matrix. Minutes, maybe less. I'm reading the quantum core now. Eloan's voice was barely audible through the static. The master override codes are here, but the extraction process, it's going to take at least 4 minutes. And Ronan, the radiation shielding is compromised. I'm already showing elevated exposure on my dosimeter. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices. Save one person I cared about or save millions I'd never meet. The training kicked in cold, calculated, brutal. But the human part of me screamed against it. Do it! I whispered into the radio. Ronan, no. Soraya grabbed my arm. There has to be another way. We can't just. There is no other way. I yanked my arm free, the pressure of command and impending doom finally breaking through my composure. You think I want to do this? You think this is easy? But if we don't stop those launches, the Reset Council wins. They get their controlled apocalypse, and civilization collapses exactly as they planned. The radio crackled again. It's okay, Ronan. I understand. Eloan's voice was steady now, resigned. I joined this service to protect people. This is what that means. Just tell me what to do. Kale was already pulling up the quantum vault protocols on his terminal. Eloan, you need to access the primary extraction matrix. There should be a biometric scanner next to the core housing. I see it. Placing my hand on the scanner now. Pause. System is acknowledging. Beginning extraction sequence. The bunker shuddered more violently. On the structural display, I watched the support beams in section C7 reach their breaking point. The ceiling was coming down, and Eloan was directly underneath it. Extraction at 20%, she reported, her voice strained. The radiation readings they're climbing fast. I can taste metal, and my hands are starting to shake from the exposure. I gripped the radio so hard my knuckles went white. Stay with me, Eloan. Just a few more minutes. Ronan, Soraya said quietly. Look at this. She pointed to another section of the intelligence report. The Reset Council sanctuaries, they're not just bunkers. They're complete underground cities, designed to house tens of thousands. They've been moving key personnel and resources there for months. Where? I demanded. Scattered across the globe. North Dakota, Siberia, the Australian outback. They plan to wait out the nuclear winter, then emerge to rebuild civilization according to their design. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about stopping a nuclear war. It was about preventing the complete subjugation of humanity's future. The Reset Council wasn't just orchestrating destruction. They were positioning themselves as the only survivors with the resources to rebuild. Extraction at 60%, Eloan reported, but her voice was weaker now. I can see the codes forming in the quantum matrix. The beautiful thing is, they never realized the vault doesn't just contain override codes. It contains the location data for every nuclear facility worldwide, including their secret installations. My heart raced. What do you mean? The Reset Council built their own nuclear arsenal. Hidden silos, submarine bases, mobile platforms. They plan to emerge from their sanctuaries with the only remaining nuclear weapons, guaranteeing their dominance. But those locations are encoded in the quantum vault too. The strategic implications were staggering. If we could access that data, we wouldn't just stop the immediate crisis. We could expose and neutralize the entire conspiracy. Extraction at 80%, Eloan continued. But the structural integrity in here is failing fast. I can hear the support beams groaning. And the radiation, I'm starting to feel nauseous. My dosimeter is maxed out. I looked at the countdown timer. 9 minutes until global nuclear launch. Even if we got the codes, we'd need time to implement them across multiple command networks. Every second counted. Aloan, as soon as you have those codes, transmit them immediately. Don't wait for full extraction. Understood. Extraction at 90%. 95. Her voice was barely a whisper now. I've got them. Transmitting now. The main terminal lit up as data flooded in. Not just override codes, but complete schematics, location coordinates, personnel files. The entire Reset Council operation laid bare in quantum encrypted detail. Got it! Kale shouted, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Beginning override sequence for Beijing, Moscow, and Islamabad grids. But Ronan, look at this data. They have installations we never knew existed. Underground silos in Montana, a submarine base in the Arctic, mobile platforms in international waters. The radio crackled one final time. Ronan, the codes are transmitted. The Reset Council, they never saw this coming. They thought they were so clever, but they forgot that sometimes the people they're trying to control fight back. The structural display showed section C7 in complete collapse. The radio went silent except for the steady tone of a severed connection. I stared at the dead microphone in my hand, feeling something break inside me. But the countdown timer showed 7 minutes, and Kale was still working frantically to implement the override codes. She did it, Soraya whispered, tears streaming down her face. Look at the data. Everything we need to stop them, to expose the whole conspiracy. The locations of their sanctuaries, their hidden arsenals, their personnel files. We can make sure this never happens again. The launch prevention systems were engaging across the globe. On the main display, I watched as nuclear silos powered down, submarine missile systems went into lockdown, and mobile platforms received abort commands. The immediate crisis was ending, but the cost was everything. Ronan, Kale said quietly, the override is working. We're preventing the launches, but we need to act fast on those council locations before they realize what's happened and disappear. I looked at the intelligence data scrolling across the screens. Names, faces, locations, everything we needed to hunt down the people responsible for this madness. The Reset Council had planned for every contingency except one. Someone willing to sacrifice everything to stop them. Soraya, compile a complete intelligence package. Every location, every name, every detail. We're going to transmit this to every remaining government and military facility worldwide. No matter what happens to us, this information survives. She nodded, already working at her terminal. The quantum vault contained more than they realized. It's not just about stopping the nuclear launches. It's about preventing them from ever attempting this again. The bunker shuddered one final time as the collapse in Section C7 reached its conclusion. On the monitor, I watched the last of the support structure give way, sealing that section forever. Aloan was gone, but her sacrifice had given us the keys to stopping a conspiracy that would have enslaved humanity's future. The Reset Council thought they were orchestrating a controlled apocalypse, but they had underestimated the determination of people who refused to surrender. The countdown timer showed 3 minutes remaining, but it no longer mattered. The nuclear launches were prevented, the conspiracy exposed, and the future, whatever was left of it, would be decided by humanity itself, not by a cabal of would-be rulers hiding in underground palaces. I keyed the radio for a final transmission to any remaining command authorities. This is Major Ronan, Deep Underground Command Center 7. The immediate nuclear crisis has been averted. Transmitting complete intelligence package on the Reset Council conspiracy. They're still out there, but they're exposed now. The fight isn't over. It's just beginning. The radio crackled with acknowledgments from around the world. Governments, military commands, intelligence agencies, all receiving the data that would allow them to hunt down the architects of humanity's near destruction. But in the silence that followed, I found myself staring at the collapsed section where Eloan had made her final stand. The weight of command meant making impossible choices, but it also meant living with the consequences. The nuclear war had been prevented, but the world above us was forever changed. Cities lay in ruins, millions were dead, and the survivors would spend years rebuilding what the Reset Council had destroyed. Yet humanity would survive, and it would do so on its own terms, not as subjects of a shadow oligarchy. I turned back to the control systems, where Kale was coordinating with the remaining command authorities worldwide. There was still work to do, still a conspiracy to dismantle, still a world to rebuild. But for just a moment, I allowed myself to remember Eloan's final words. Sometimes the people they're trying to control fight back. She was right, and we were going to make sure they never forgot it. The emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as I dragged myself through the smoke-filled corridor toward the primary command center. My left arm hung useless at my side, dislocated when the blast door had slammed shut, sealing Eloan in the collapsing data vault 3 levels below. Her final transmission still echoed in my earpiece, along with her last words. The master override is in the primary console. Soraya has the biometric codes. The countdown is real. They're not bluffing. I could hear Kale's voice over the intercom, his usual calm cracking under the pressure. Ronan, we've got less than 4 minutes before the Beijing array goes hot. The Moscow silos are already spinning up. The European grid just switched to automated sequence. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. The taste of blood filled my mouth as I stumbled into the command center. Soraya stood at the central console, her fingers flying across the keyboard with desperate precision. Behind her, 2 figures in black tactical gear lay motionless, the conspiracy operatives who had followed us into the bunker. The bullet holes in the reinforced glass told the story of their final, failed attempt to stop us. The acrid smell of gunpowder mixed with the metallic tang of blood and ozone from overloaded circuits. "Tell me you have it," I gasped, collapsing against a console. My vision blurred as shock set in, but I forced myself to focus on the countdown timers blazing across the main display. 3 minutes, 47 seconds until the automated launch sequence would fire enough nuclear warheads to end civilization. "I have partial access," Soraya said without looking up. The shadow organization, they called themselves the Reset Council. They've been planning this for years, systematically replacing key personnel, installing backdoors in every major nuclear system. Her voice broke. "The missing leaders aren't dead, Ronan. They're being held in a black site facility, but that doesn't matter now. Even if we could reach them, the automated systems are beyond their control." I watched the screens showing nuclear installations across 6 continents. Green lights were turning red in sequence, automated systems following their programmed logic in the absence of proper authorization codes. The beautiful, terrifying precision of mutual assured destruction, triggered not by war but by the calculated removal of every person who could stop it. "What do you need from me?" I asked, though I could barely feel my legs. "The biometric scanner requires 2 senior officers," she said, her hands shaking as she indicated a panel embedded in the console. "But Kale's coordinates are locked into the secondary station. We need his authorization transmitted through the hardline connection." I understood. The failsafe required both of us, but the emergency protocols had separated us into different command points. I pressed my palm against the scanner, feeling the familiar tingle of the biometric reader. What happens when we activate this? Best case scenario? We regain control of about 70% of the global arsenal. We can prevent the cascade, stop the automated retaliation sequences. She paused, her finger hovering over the final switch. But we'll still lose the cities they've already targeted. The Reset Council's primary strikes were hard-coded into the system. 3 minutes, 12 seconds. How many cities? 3 confirmed. London, Mumbai, and Tel Aviv. Maybe more. Her voice was barely a whisper. The primary warheads are already in flight. I thought about Eloan, trapped and dying in the collapsed data vault, using her final moments to guide us to this point. She had believed we could save something, even if we couldn't save everything. The weight of that choice pressed down on me like the tons of concrete that had sealed her fate. Kale, are you ready? I called into the intercom. Biometric confirmed on my end. Came his steady reply. On your count, Ronan. Do it, I said. Soraya's finger came down on the switch as Kale activated his station simultaneously. The command center erupted in alarms as every screen filled with data streams. I watched launch sequences abort in real time, Moscow's ICBMs powering down, Beijing's submarine fleet receiving stand-down orders, the European defense grid switching from automated to manual control. For a moment, I thought we had won. Then the first impact registered on our sensors. London's gone. Kale's voice crackled through the intercom. I'm reading a massive detonation in the Thames corridor. Mumbai's showing the same signature. Pause filled with static. Tel Aviv just went dark. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of 15 million lives settling on my shoulders. We had prevented global annihilation, but we couldn't prevent the Reset Council's primary strikes. The cities they had chosen to destroy in their bid for power were already burning. The automated systems are responding to our override, Soraya said, her voice hollow. We've regained control of the remaining arsenal. No further launches detected. 2 minutes, 38 seconds. The countdown timer had stopped, frozen at a number that would haunt my dreams forever. We had been that close to losing everything. Kale, what's the status of the surface communications? I asked. Patchy, but I'm getting signals from NORAD, the Pentagon, and what's left of the European command structure. They're confirming our override took effect. His voice carried a mixture of relief and despair. The president's alive, Ronan. He was in the bunker when the council made their move. He's authorizing emergency protocols. I slumped against the console, my dislocated arm throbbing with each heartbeat. Outside our buried fortress, the world was burning. 3 major cities had been sacrificed to prevent the incineration of human civilization. The Reset Council's coup had failed, but they had still managed to murder millions in their final, calculated act. The remaining leaders, I said, the ones in the black sites? Rescue teams are being dispatched, Soraya replied. But it doesn't matter. Even if we get them back, the damage is done. The global order is shattered. Trust between nations is gone. The economic disruption alone will kill millions more. I thought about the chain of events that had brought us here, the carefully orchestrated disappearances, the systematic sabotage of fail-safes, the infiltration of our most secure facilities. The Reset Council had planned for decades, and we had stopped them with minutes to spare. But victory felt like ash in my mouth. How many did we save? I asked. 7 billion, give or take, Kale said through the intercom. The cities we lost, 15 million dead, maybe more from radiation exposure. But the cascade is broken. No more automated launches. No more retaliation sequences. The war is over before it consumed everything. I looked at the screens showing the aftermath, radiation readings from the destroyed cities, refugee movements already beginning, emergency broadcasts trying to maintain some semblance of order. The world would rebuild, but it would never be the same. The age of nuclear deterrence was over, replaced by the harsh reality that small groups of determined individuals could hold civilization hostage. The conspiracy files, I said. Everything Soraya uncovered about the Reset Council. We need to make sure it all goes public. Already done, she said, showing me a transmission log. Every major news outlet, every government database, every social media platform. Within hours, the world will know exactly who did this and why. I nodded, though the motion made my head spin. Justice would come, but it would be cold comfort to the families of the dead. We had made the right choice, the only choice, but the cost was still almost unbearable. What happens now? I asked. Now we survive, Soraya said. We rebuild. We make sure this never happens again. The bunker structure groaned as seismic waves from the distant detonations reached us, the earth itself recoiling from the violence we had unleashed in our desperation to prevent greater violence. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine the world above. Cities in flames, millions dead, nations scrambling to maintain order in the face of unprecedented catastrophe. We had prevented the end of civilization, but we had not prevented its fundamental transformation. In the end, that was what victory looked like in a world where the stakes were absolute. We had saved the human race, but we had not saved the world we knew. The Reset Council was broken, their conspiracy exposed, their leaders dead or captured. But their final act had still rewritten the rules of existence for every person on Earth. I opened my eyes and looked at the screens showing our damaged planet. 7 billion people would see tomorrow because of what we had done in this buried tomb. It would have to be enough. The countdown timer remained frozen at 2 minutes, 38 seconds, the moment we had pulled humanity back from the brink of extinction. I memorized that number, knowing I would carry it with me for the rest of my life. It was the measure of how close we had come to losing everything and how much we had sacrificed to save what remained. In the red-lit silence of the command center, surrounded by the ghosts of our choices, I finally understood what Pyrrhic victory really meant. We had won, but the world we had saved was not the world we had lost.